Hi guys, and welcome to another blush declutter. This is my third and final video in this series where we've been looking at all of my powder blushes. I will link the videos for my cool tone blushes as well as my warm tone blushes down below. In my first video, the cool toned one, I actually went through and explained kind of my logic and thought process for all of my powder products that I'm going to be decluttering here. And so I'm not going to recap all of that here. If you're curious about my thought process, that's a great place to start. We are wrapping up with my nude blushes here, and I gotta be honest, this is where I'm gonna struggle because I love me some boring blush. So we're gonna do these by color family first and then talk about formulas inside of those color families. And then at the end of this video, we're going to look at what I've kept from this collection as well as from my warm and cools, just to make sure that what I'm keeping doesn't have any duplicates. And then I'll come back and update you on totals for my collection. So let's go ahead and get into this. All right, so these are my pinky toned nude blushes. I think what I'm going to do, because I have so many here and it's going to be difficult to swatch, is I'm going to go ahead and pull out the matte ones and we'll start there and decide if there's any I want to keep. Let's do these like so. So we'll start down here. So this is a butter blush. This is in the shade Plum Rose. This one is very, very light. It's almost too light for me, but it has this really kind of cool toned grayish undertone to it. It's kind of interesting, and I don't feel like I have anything else like it in my collection. This is from the Balm. This is Beach Balm, and I do love this blush. So there is that shade there, and I do really like that tone. And I actually like it in a matte formula too, to be honest. Like, that's one of the few neutral mattes, or like the only mattes that I've really found myself reaching for a lot lately. In terms of a matte formula, this is a Milani powder blush in Romantic Rose. Very popular color from them. And this one is going to lean a little bit more burgundy. And then this is a little Tarte blush in Party. I think this was part of a, I don't know, a Point Perk at some point. That one leans a little more pink. Probably should have put that in with my mom's. I know I definitely want to keep this one from the Balm. I do really like it. I'm kind of apathetic on keeping these two here. I may put this one in a maybe pile. I've not done a maybe yet. I'm not looking at it and feeling like, oh, I want to declutter you, but I'm also, you know, like I said, I really wanted to hang on to shades that I was like super passionate about if it was from a non-cruelty free brand, and oh, it's tempting. This one's just going to go to the side. So I'm just going to keep the one for sure right now. And some of these pinky blushes are a little pinky peachy nude. Some are more pinky mauve nude, but I figured I would put them all together and make some decisions. All right, this one's kind of off camera, so let's go ahead and get this swatched first. This is one of my favorite blushes. This is Mood Exposure from Hourglass, and this has the ambient lighting powder, the pink one that I like, and it's kind of this murky, cool toned mauve shade. And I love this. I love this formula. I love this color. I can tell you right now, I'm just going to put this one in the bin because I'm keeping it. Let's swatch this next. This is Charlotte Tilbury. This is her original Pillow Talk blush. Has more of a highlighter shade in the middle. I'm just going to swirl it all together. And this is nicely glowy. And it's a little warmer than that Mood Exposure shade. Let's do this next. So this is another butter blush from Frizz's Formula. This is the shade Spicy Mauve. This one should have gone in my cool toned mauve ones, but I felt like, no, when I swatch it, I was definitely getting more nude than mauve. I feel like it looks a lot more mauve in the pan, and then in reality what you have is something that comes off a lot more neutral. It's definitely the glowiest blush out of the three currently on my arm. This is Marc Jacobs Flesh and Fantasy. I've talked a lot about this on my channel and how much I love it. It is a nice satin texture, and I can tell you right now that one is going nowhere. I am tempted to go ahead and call it a day on this e.l.f. one. This is one that was in my project pan. I feel like the formula might be starting to go off on it a little bit. It is definitely a dupe for that Marc Jacobs blush there. Just feel like the texture is, like I said, just starting to go off a little bit on it. This is a CoverGirl Classic Color Blush in Soft Minx. It's a very glowy blush. It's kind of chunky packaging for a blush, considering I took the brush out, so I was never using it. But it is a very glowy blush, and I really liked the color of it. In fact, that one is kind of giving me similar vibes to that Physicians Formula blush down here. This is from Ulta Beauty. This is their mineral blush in the shade Tiger Lily. I do really like this formula quite a bit. It is looking, of course, very similar to what is on my arm. And then this is another glowy blush from Ulta. This is their Flushed blush, and this is in the shade Peach Swirl. This one should have been in my peach blush section. We'll see how it swatches here. Yeah, see, that still looks very nude. And then these last two are both the baked ones from Kiko Milano. This is from their Ocean Feel collection, and this is shade 03. And then this is their Arctic Holiday collection, Memorial Biscuit. And I think these two colors are very, very similar to one another. So I think it just might be the Ocean one is a little bit deeper, but the formula on their baked blushes is so nice. Yeah, those are very similar colors there. If anything, I would say Memorial Biscuit's just a little bit lighter. And I've swatched all of these heavy because I want to kind of see the undertones of them. But in reality, what you're getting is this like super soft, glowy flush to the cheeks that I just think is like stunning. All right, I feel like these two are super similar to one another, the CoverGirl and the Butter Blush in Spicy Mauve. And so I feel like I'm going to keep the CoverGirl and pass this one on. I think I've decided that these two are just too similar to keep, so I'm going to keep the Holiday one that's slightly lighter and slightly more pinky toned, and I'm going to pass this one on to a friend. I'm also going to make the decision to go ahead and pass this e.l.f. one into the trash can. I've gotten great use out of it, but I feel like it's past its time. It's looking a little peaked. So right now I'm left with 6 blushes. I'm going to go ahead and re-swatch all of these real fast on my arm so I can see them all side by side. And actually, let's just toss this Hourglass one in for good measure too. So I went ahead and swatched Mood Exposure here, and then I went ahead and swatched that Butter Blush here. I feel like when I want that sort of cool toned murkiness, I feel like Mood Exposure is going to give me that. So I am going to go ahead and pass on the Butter Blush and hang on to the Hourglass. I have come to the realization that Marc Jacobs Flesh and Fantasy and Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk are very, very, very similar, but I'm a crazy person and don't want to give either of them up. Shade here is super glowy, and it's probably my most glowy nude pink blush, and that's the one from CoverGirl, so I really like that. I'm gonna hang on to it. And then these two shades here have ended up looking very, very similar to one another. Memorial Biscuit, and then let's see, Peach Swirl from Ulta. And I think I prefer the formula from the Kiko one more, so I'm going to pass the Ulta one on. And then this last shade here in the Flushed Blush from Ulta, it's a really similar shade to these two down here that I've kept from Charlotte Tilbury and from Marc Jacobs, but I am going to go ahead and pass this guy on. All right, so here are all of the blushes that are neutral but have a bit more of a rosy undertone to them. So opposed to something that has a bit more of a pink or a mauve to it like this, we're going to be pulling something that's got a little bit more rose to it, but I still wouldn't wear this as like a pinky blush. Like I would wear this more as a neutral sort of rose toned blush. And to be honest, I probably could have put these in with my pinks, some of them, but I elected to just kind of keep this all together because ultimately at the end of the day, it's less about how I categorized it into one of these 3 videos and more about me just getting into it, swatching everything. All right, so I have quite a few matte blushes in this collection, and this is a shade that I will wear matte. I still think I prefer glowy, but let's look at the 5 mattes. So those are the ones down here. This is probably the most nude out of all of them. This is from Makeup Revolution. This is the matte blush powder in nude. I don't know as if they're making this formula anymore, but it was really, really nice. And that is just a really pretty, like I said, rosy nude matte shade. This is from e.l.f. This is one of their primer infused blushes in Always Rosy. And that one's going to be a little bit more cool toned than the one from e.l.f. This is Bobbi Brown. This is an old bronzer of hers. Actually, it's in the shade Telluride. They said it was an illuminating bronzer powder. I found this to be matte, not illuminating, and I had it in my bronzer collection, and then I realized I would probably enjoy it more as a sheer wash of sort of a nudish rose blush. This is from ColourPop. What shade is this? This is To the 10. That's not a bad matte formula, I have to say. Definitely leans a little bit more of that rosy pink, so I will definitely have to take that probably back into my pinks collection if I decide I want to keep that shade. And then this is from the Balm. This is another Balm kind of blush that went along with Balm Beach, which I kept, and this is Balm Springs. Definitely feel like I've used Balm Beach more than Balm Springs, and that is a very similar shade to the ColourPop one, like very, very similar, almost spot on. So those are my matte blushes, and then let's go ahead and do the shimmer ones. This is one from Essence Satin Touch Blush in the shade Satin Love. I love this formula. I love how it feels. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous satin texture, and so I gotta be honest, 9 out of 10, I'm probably gonna reach for something more of a satin texture than any of the ones down here. This is newest to my collection and is from Kiko Milano, part of their Tuscan Sunshine collection in the shade 02 Tuscan Iris. I'm just gonna swirl these all together. Ooh, that one goes a lot more orangey, doesn't it? I think I'm actually going to move that over. We haven't done sort of warm nudes and browns yet, so I think I'm going to move that one over because I want to swatch that against some of the other shades over there. And then this is a little Natasha Denona blush duo in the, let's see, palette number 10. I ended up putting this one here because I had to pick a place to put it. It was either in the pale apricots or here, and I just felt like when I think of this palette, I think of this shade most, and if anything, I'm just using the lighter, more apricot shade almost as a topper to lighten it up or just add a little, I don't know, light to my cheeks. And this one is quite rosy and quite glowy, so probably the glowiest out of all of the ones I've swatched. Yeah, and then this one is, it's almost too light for me to use as a blush. Like, it's super, super fair, but it looks really pretty sort of topped over that blush. So I can tell you now, I don't want to get rid of this. I do really enjoy it. I also do not want to get rid of the Satin Touch blush here from Essence. And so kind of left with these 5 matte ones and trying to decide if I want to keep any of them. I feel like these two are super similar to each other. So Balm Springs here and the e.l.f. Primer Infused Blush. So I was just playing around with both of these on my hand. I feel like I'm going to keep the e.l.f. one and pass on the Balm Springs one. The texture of these e.l.f. blushes is just so smoothing and so pretty. So I'm going to keep a matte one. I feel like I'd rather keep an e.l.f. one. I'm going to pass on this little ColourPop one. I'm just not reaching for the shade a ton. And then I've kept this Telluride shade because I always tell myself I'm going to get a lot of good use out of it. And then I just haven't. And then I feel like, although this matte blush from Makeup Revolution is really pretty, I'm probably going to reach for the Satin Touch blush from Essence over it. The colors are really similar, and I just prefer the texture of the Essence one to the Makeup Revolution one. All right, so here are the blushes that are a little bit more neutral, a little bit more brown leaning. I've got this random Essence blush is looking very corally and may need to be compared against some of my corally blushes here in a second. All right, let's start with this because I do think I'm going to pass it on. This is from Kiko Milano. This was part of their Blush Cocoa Shock collection. This one I unfortunately dropped and I lost the sort of preppy pink shade, and I was keeping it because I was using this shade down here, but I also started to realize that I had this sort of neutral shade a lot over in my collection. So then I started reaching for more of this stuff, and I've had this for years. It's seen better days. It's time for it to go. I think I'm going to dive into the middle here. This is from Wet n Wild. This is one of my favorite shades from them. This is in Rose Champagne. It's a color that I don't think they even make anymore. It was super neutral and super glowy and just kind of gave me this, like, I could use it almost like bronzed slash highlight. Like, I felt like this was a blush that I could put on and it would give me sort of definition, a little bit of brown, but also still look like blush and be glowy enough that I didn't even have to use a highlighter. I loved it. I'm kind of thinking that this shade in the middle of this little CoverGirl Instant Cheekbones palette is going to end up being very similar, and if so, I'm super excited because I would like to find a cruelty-free replacement for that product, and so far I have not. But that CoverGirl palette is super glowy also, which is one of the reasons I really liked it. Yeah, it might be ever so slightly more peach than brown. I wonder if I mix a little bit of this on the top. Yeah, all right. Well, that is helpful. Let's pull other blushes that might be in that shade. This one from e.l.f. This is one of their primer infused shimmer blushes in Always Hazy. This is newer to my collection. It is really nicely glowy, and that is such a pretty shade. It's almost a little more, it's like a slightly deeper, browner shade than the one from Wet n Wild, but so pretty. Let's see where to go next. Let's do these two next. So this is actually a matte blush from Creme Shop. We had this one, I think, in a different video, and I moved it over here because I realized I thought it was going to end up looking a little bit more neutral. It's got a little bit of a terracotta shift to it. I do think that's pretty. And then this is the one from Kiko Milano that I moved over here. I was thinking this one was a little bit more rosy, but as I swatched it, I realized that we're really more heading into this family here, and it's kind of a nice satin texture. Let's go ahead and get this swatch out of the way. So this is from Essence. This is the Satin Touch Blush in Satin Coral. I'm going to swatch it here, but my gut tells me I'm going to need to take this back to the corals that I've kept and swatch it, because that one is looking a lot more pinky coral than anything else on my arm right now. And then because this one's got sort of a pinky coral and then it's true neutral, let's do this. This is a Jouer Blush Duo in Adore. The formula of these blushes, I think they are stunning, and I really like mixing them together. I may just swatch these three on my hand since I'm out of room here. This is Clinique Cheek Pop in Nude Pop, which is a matte, but it has a nice sort of satiny texture to it. It doesn't read super, super matte. And then this is from Essence. This is a Satin Touch Blush in Satin Bronze, which is even a little more brown leaning. And then this is my newest shade from Essence. This is in The Blush, and this is Bespoke, which is quite glowy, and I believe even more brown. Yeah, that one's got a little bit more of an orangey undertone, and that one has a little bit more of a neutral undertone. So I'm going to go back and re-swatch everything, but for the time being, I do think I want to keep these two. I'm going to pass this Clinique one on. I am going to get rid of the Wet n Wild and keep the CoverGirl. I want to keep the e.l.f. Primer Infused Shimmer Blush. I'm going to pass on the Creme Shop because I feel like it's just quite pigmented, and if I want a matte blush in this sort of category, because I don't have any mattes, I can definitely pull the matte that's in here, and it's a little lighter and a little bit friendlier for my skin tone. And I do feel like I want to keep this one from Essence as well as this one from Kiko. Let me do a little swatching again down my arm. All right, guys, you ready for me to split hairs? Okay, so first up, I did swatch these two from Jouer. This is the matte shade, and then this is the glowy shade. And what I realized is that that glowy shade is very, very similar to the shade that's in here. So when I was looking for that sort of perfect glowy blush to replace the one from Wet n Wild, so when I want that sort of light glowy blush, I feel like that is going to be my best. So I'm going to pass that on. All right, so this is where we start to split hairs. So I have 2 satin formulas on my arm and 2 glowy formulas on my arm. So this one here from e.l.f. is definitely very glowy in Always Hazy. Then I've got more of a satin texture that's a little more warm toned from the Kiko Milano collection. And then finally I come to these from Essence, and I've got the Satin Touch blush here, which is very, very similar undertone to the one from e.l.f. It's just a little lighter and a little less glowy. And then I've got one that is very similar to the Kiko one, but is more glowy. And guys, I did really well in my other declutters. I'm keeping all of these. For the time being, I'm also going to keep this coral shade from Essence in the Satin Touch blush in Satin Coral, but I do want to put it up against some of my other coral blushes. So let's total up what I've kept and what I've decluttered from this nude section. All right, guys, so here are the blushes that are in my keep pile. I right now have a total of 15 here. It's definitely the one that I've kept the most of, but I am getting rid of 17, and so that is 53% gone from my collection. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go kind of off camera real fast, open up all the blushes that I'm keeping, do a bunch of swatches for any shades that seem similar, and then come back and report out if there's anything else that I want to go ahead and pass along. All right, guys, so as predicted, I did find some shades that were incredibly similar to one another, especially as I looked at these sort of soft nude pinks, ones that were sitting in my pink collection, and then some that had made it into my nudes. I definitely feel like these two shades here are both glowy and really pretty. Milani and the Laura Geller pink buttercream shade and the Milani shade in Petal Primavera. They're both giving me nice glow. And this is the Essence Satin Touch blush, which is less glowy than these two. And then this one down at the end from CoverGirl is just, it's incredibly glowy. It's like super, super shiny glowy. So I think what I've decided at this point is I'm going to go ahead and pass on the CoverGirl one. I'm going to go ahead and pass on the Milani one. And I'm going to keep one glowy and one satin in this kind of color. And so I will hang on to the Laura Geller and the Essence. I also found 2 matte blushes that are like spot on to one another as I swatch them and as I look at them, and they honestly feel very similar in the pan. So this is the e.l.f. Primer Fuse blush in Always Rosy and the Essence The blush in Befitting. So I think I'm just going to keep the Essence one. It's a little smaller scale and I think more travel friendly for me. So I'm going to pass on e.l.f. and keep Essence. I also realized that the Essence Satin Touch blush in Satin Coral is very, very similar to Mrs. Summer Peach in the Catrice Strobing blush. When you swatch them side by side, they are looking super similar to one another, especially as you kind of blend them out as such. So I'm going to go ahead and keep the Essence one. I just feel like I like the formula a little bit better than the Catrice one. And then I said I was going to be on the prowl for a replacement for this butter blush. And this is in the shade Vintage Rouge. It is a really pretty sort of, I would say, terracotta type color, but I found 2 in my collection that I am keeping. And they're both a little bit more glowy, and I don't know, I just like the formulas a little bit better. One is Memorial Biscuit, which is that one there from Kiko Milano, and then the other one is the shade in this Natasha Denona palette, which is also very, very similar, but a prettier glowy texture. So I'm going to go ahead and pass on the Physicians Formula one. And so that kind of changes my total. That means I am passing along 5 more blushes. So that brings my total of blushes that I'm keeping to 29. And then the ones that I am decluttering to 56. So I have gotten rid of 66% or 2/3 of my collection of powder blushes. And I'm actually feeling okay about that. It feels very extreme, I know. And if many of you guys watching may be like, holy crap, why is she getting rid of so much? But like I said, I think in that first video, I'm trying to shrink everything into one drawer for blush, bronzer, and highlight powder form. And B, I've really been collecting and buying a lot more cream products. So I just feel like my cream collection of blushes has grown so much. It just doesn't make sense for me to keep powder blushes that are the similar color or I'm just not reaching for anymore. So that kind of wraps us up for here. Typically, I would be showing you the inside of my drawer, but I want to remind you that I am going to be doing bronzer and highlighter next, and then I'm going to see how everything fits in my drawer, and I may have to come back through all of my blushes, highlighters, and bronzers for kind of another pass if what I want to keep at the end of these videos is still too large to fit in that single drawer. So that is where we're sitting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video series. I will be doing probably I think we'll probably do highlighters next and then bronzers, and so those will be coming out here from me shortly. Have a great week, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.